The older that we get, the more set in our ways that we are, and the more we realize how much that we can be hurt. And so you become almost more closed off and less vulnerable.
Yeah, I think feeling like you're too old and that your time has already passed is a very natural feeling for anyone of any age. I remember I got out of a relationship at 35 and I felt that way.
Like it can also be such a beautiful time in life too, because you're not raising kids and you're not fighting, schools and dropping people off and picking people up from events. And like as you get older, you do have more time too to put into a relationship. Welcome to Date Like a Matchmaker, the podcast where love meets strategy and connections are made with a little bit of help from us. We're your hosts, Tiffany and Jorrie. Each week, we bring you fascinating stories from matchmakers, relationship experts, and couples who found love with a little bit of help. Whether you're single, in a relationship, or just curious about how matchmaking really works, this podcast is for you. We'll uncover the behind the scenes of the matchmaking process and share tips that could just change the way that you approach love. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about if there is such a thing as being too old to find love.
So, one of the questions I get asked more often than not from women and men that are dating again now in their 50s, 60s, even 70s is it too late to find love? Are they too old for the dating scene at this point? What are your thoughts on that?
I truly believe that there's never a bad time to find love. There's also never a perfect time to start dating and find love either. But especially, I think that with our clients that are in like their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, sometimes we're almost more successful with them because they're in a place where they genuinely want to find it. They're not looking just to date just for the sake of dating. They don't want to just date around. I don't think there's ever a cutoff for finding love.
I don't think there is either, but there are certain factors that do play a part in it at certain ages, in my opinion. But I think if you open your parameters, then no, there's no cutoff to finding love. But I'll give you an example. I just had a client, she's in her mid 60s and she's wonderful. She's educated, successful woman, beautiful, has everything going for her. And I was sort of on the fence with a match I was going to send over to her with a really great guy, but he was only 5'7". Now, so I called her and I spoke with her and sent over the profile and told her I was on the fence and told her, I know he's not the ideal height because she's his same height, but after seeing his profile and hearing about him, she wants to meet him. Now, if I had sent that same profile with that same really high quality gentleman to a woman who was, I don't know, maybe early 40s or even mid 40s or late 40s, they might not have been as open to
Been as open.
considering that.
Yeah.
Right, because of the height. So I think that you can find love at any age, but I think you have to also take into consideration that men pass away before women do,
Right,
right?
right.
So the dating pool gets smaller as we all age. So you have to consider that too. You just have to look at the stats behind it if you're dating. So if you're a woman in the 60s, right, you're gonna probably have to budge a little bit more on things like height and stuff like that, as opposed to maybe someone who's like 35 years old. So I think if you consider all those factors that go into it, hands down, you can always find love.
Yeah, certainly. I do think that also as you age, just naturally the dating pool gets smaller and smaller. And you also typically need a different strategy to it. I think especially for women. Um, Once women hit 50, they want to date much, much closer to their age compared to if a woman is 40, she's probably open to dating up to 50. When she hits 50, she is only now open to dating up to 55. When she hits 60, she's open to dating up to 63, and so the pool that you have to choose from with your own parameters and your own mind continue to get smaller and smaller and smaller too. And so I think it's important that as we age, that we continue to stay open-minded because maybe you want someone when you're 60 that is only 63 maximum, but maybe the true love of your life is 67, 68, 69. And I think people close themselves off with age too. Um, I'm a firm believer in that people, like women typically date up to about 15 years older. Men typically date up to about 15 years younger, except for when women hit 45. They're no longer open to dating 15 years older. That range continues to get shorter, like smaller and smaller and smaller as they age. So you have to have a
And I
different strategy.
Yeah, and I can understand why, because when you're 35 dating someone 15 years older than yourself, you're not going to feel the age difference as much. But then as we get older, you're 50 dating someone who's on 65, you're going to start to feel that difference. So I can understand why, but your parameters can't be too sort of limiting.
What do you think is an appropriate age range for a woman who is 55? And then also give me an appropriate age range for a man who's 55.
So I think, in my opinion, it should be for women 10 years older. And I mean, of course, I think that it should be 10 years older for men too, but just the reality of the society we live in, men don't typically date 10 years older. Um, so I think that for men, I think they should be open to dating up at least up to their own age. And I know a lot of men aren't open to that as they get older too. I interview a lot of men that are in their like early 40s. Men in their early 40s, they're open to dating up to their own age. But then there's
Yeah.
men in their mid 40s, late 40s, they aren't for some reason at that point. Um, so I think that men should date up to their own age, and I think women should be open to 10 years older. But I also think it should really just depend on the person. I think you shouldn't turn someone down if he's like perfect, but your ideal age in your mind is only someone who's maybe within a 5 year range of your own age, but he's a great match for you and he's, 8 years, 10 years older. I think that you should take it case by case.
Yeah, I think it boils down to being a better, like more of an energy match than necessarily about the number. If you are someone who wants to go and see and do and travel and you go, 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 and you are a guy that is 50, you could meet a woman who's 55 who could outrun you? And so it's
Mm.
more of the energy and the lifestyle than it is necessarily the number, too.
Yeah, I get that. I wish that we could get that point across to men, but men, I just think they have such a thing in their heads about not dating older than themselves. I interview some guys that are 53 years old and they paddleboard in the ocean every day and they're hot and they're amazing. But then I also interview men that are 53 years old that sit on their couch all day and they're a little bit, they don't take care of themselves and they're just
Eating
not great.
potato chips on the couch watching
Eat
TV.
potato chips. Yeah. And they just feel like they're 63, not 53. So it just depends
Right.
on the person.
Yeah.
Depends on their energy, how they've taken care of themselves, because that catches up to you if you don't take care of yourself at a certain point. That stuff catches up to you.
I always say you can always tell the life that someone has lived by their energy levels in their 50s and 60s. If you've
Hmm.
lived a healthy, active lifestyle, you can tell that, by the
Hmm.
time you are in your 50s and 60s compared to someone who has sat on the couch and been eating potato chips for the last 25
Hmm.
years. So
Yeah. I think feeling like you're too old and that your time has already passed is a very natural feeling for anyone of any age. I remember I got out of a relationship at 35 and I felt that way.
really,
And yeah, and I was only 35 years old, but I remember thinking like, well, it's too late for me now. What should I do now with my life? Maybe I'll become a nun. I didn't really think I was going to become a nun. But I remember really feeling devastated, like, well, my life's that time frame has already passed. There's no hope for me. I don't feel like that now, right? And now I'm 5 years older. So I think everyone feels that way, no matter if you're 27 or you're, 50. I remember years ago, about 10 years ago, I met a woman and she was like 40 and she was all freaked out. She had just turned 40. She also had just gotten divorced. She knew I was a matchmaker. I met her at a barbecue and I remember like vividly having a conversation with her and she was like, I'm never going to find anyone. I'm 40 now, blah, blah, blah. And she's married now. She found someone great who's actually like right around her own age. So I think no matter where you are in life, if you're single and you want to find someone, it's always going to feel scary.
I think dating in general for a lot of people is just really scary. I mean, like you have to put yourself in a really vulnerable position. And I think sometimes that the older that we get, the more set in our ways that we are, and the more we realize how much that we can be hurt. And so you become almost more closed off and less vulnerable too.
Yeah, I don't even know if it has to do with vulnerability. I think once you're alone for a while and you like live by yourself and you live this like luxuriously peaceful, amazing life exactly how you want it, I think incorporating someone into that is annoying and frustrating for some people.
Right. You have to give up a little bit of your independence, which is really, really uncomfortable for a lot of people because but here's the thing, like we are built for connection as humans, and we almost become too independent at points where it turns into a negative thing. It's like you seek this portion of like you want companionship and you want partnership, but you're not willing to give up any of your independence. And it's a really hard like pull. It's a game of tug of war. You
Mhm.
want the partnership, but you live this beautiful independent life, but you're not fully fulfilled, but you're not willing to give anything up. And you have to
Yeah.
be willing to give some of your independence up. And even like letting people come into your space. I remember being single. Granted, I was in my 20s, but I lived in this one bedroom, one bath apartment downtown Austin. And like I didn't want anyone in my space. It was my stuff, my things. I knew exactly where I left every single item of mine. And so it was weird to have someone come in and be in your space, and not even that he moved in, but just like in a relationship. And so I can imagine that if you've been single, especially older, for an extended period of time, that it's even more difficult to have someone come into your space.
Yeah, I think it probably gets harder and harder like as you grow, as you get older and you're still single.
Yeah.
And also putting up with someone's like personality quirks and everything else that goes along into it. So you just have to weigh which one means more to you, finding that companionship or having your living your luxurious single life.
There's not an age. There's not an age cutoff. I mean, we're working with an amazing woman right now who's in her 70s, and she is like so ready for love, and she's meeting amazing men and going on great dates, and she's having so much fun. And it's just like it can also be such a beautiful time in life too, because you're not raising kids and you're not fighting, schools and dropping people off and picking people up from events. And like as you get older, you do have more time too to put into a relationship. And I don't know, it's a cool stage for people to be in, to want to find love and not have the hustle and bustle of shuffling kids around too.
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to take their time and go through the process.
Hmm.
But I think also one has to understand that it is a process. So if you're starting to date, right, at any age, you have to know that inevitably there will be disappointments that come up because it's just the nature of dating. So you're going to go on some dates that aren't going to be great. Possibly not going to find someone attractive. You're just not going to connect, possibly. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It just means it's part of the process. So you have to remind yourself of that too and be okay with that as you go along with it.
Yeah. Dating is such a process. It's like we want to just fall in love, date number one, and live happily ever after. And that's just, as much as we want that to happen for people, it's just not the reality. You have to
Mhm.
figure out what you like and what you don't like. And sometimes even more than ever when you get older, because you have these expectations in your mind of what you think you should like. And then you end up connecting with someone so different sometimes.
Mhm. Thank you for listening. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on our social media. You can find us on Instagram at Executive Connections Dating. You can also find our podcast Instagram at Date Like a Matchmaker. There's a link in our bio to fill out a free profile and be considered as a match for one of our clients.
See you next time.